first question. The narrator behind the film. Calm down, it's not interrogation. Could you guys talk a little bit or discuss a little bit about how you became aware of your racialized identity and what other factors sort of shaped or intersected with this sort of process and I guess developing your philosophical, assuming approach and interest in this area? And maybe it's changed, as your lifespan has changed.
Your racial identity?
Yes, your racial identity.
I guess I'll start. No one else seems to be able to. I think I was probably 16 years old, and I was sitting in an apartment. I should have been in school. It was probably like 10 o'clock in the morning on like a Wednesday or something. And I was sitting in an apartment in the project smoking weed. And I was in there. I was the only white person in there. And as we approached the door, all my guys went inside, and I was the last one. And they introduced themselves to the resident of the apartment. And then one of them introduced me. They said, "And this is my homeboy, Matt." So right there, I said to myself, wow, you know what? For some reason, they wouldn't introduce me for myself as opposed to letting me do it. So we sitting around. I think Jerry Springer or something was on the TV, some talk show. We were sitting there passing a blunt, and I looked around, and I said, you know what? My life is a lot different than these cats is. I was a middle class cat, and I think I was probably wearing a polo shirt or something. And I'm sitting here. I am in an apartment in the projects with a whole lot of cats, and I was a little wild as a shorty, and we partied a lot and were knuckleheads. So I was sitting there. I said, you know what? I'm the only white cat that's really in my whole crew, and I realized that my life is different when I go home than my life was when I'm with these cats. If I go into a store with these cats, I get followed around. But if I'm with my mother or anybody else but myself, I don't get followed around. Those things don't happen. When I get pulled over by the police with these cats, I have to step out the car. When I'm by myself or with other white folks, that just doesn't happen. And I think that also shortly after that, all my guys were kicked out of school while I was allowed to stay in. We spent all our time together. So at that point, I was sitting there hanging out with one of my guys one day, and I said, what you get out of school for? And he looked at me and he said this. And I think we were sitting there, engaging in something we shouldn't have been doing. But yet I was with this guy all the time. I was with all these people all the time. Got in the same trouble they did. We would get called to principal's office and whatnot at the same time, yet I was allowed to stay in school. And I said to myself, wow, I'm running with a crew of 6 or 7 guys, and I'm the only one that's still here, and we've been hanging out for, a couple of years, and I'm still here. So I think that's really, I guess that's where my initial perspective came from. And I said, my life is a lot easier than that of black folk. I guess that's where it started, as I left high school shortly after that and got into college eventually. And I took a class where we were reading Patricia Hill Collins' book, Black Feminist Thought. And I think we were talking about African American women epistemologies or something. And it was her argument was structured in some way where she basically argued that we were socialized. I took from it that we were socialized to be a racist people and we are a racist nation. And at that point, 4 years later probably, my experiences, growing up began to make a whole lot more sense. I said, oh, this is why my experience is different than those of the cats I grew up with, those are the cats I went to high school with. And since then, my framework has changed drastically, but I don't think we're going to get into that at this moment. We can say that for a later question, I suppose.